Hello. This is designed to be a quick tutorial on how to enter data into table format using Microsoft Excel. You might be able to tell that this version of Microsoft Excel is 2007, but the method for entering data in table format should be the same regardless of which version you're using. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do is to be able to input column titles. And in these titles, to make sure that you include your units. So say we have an experiment where a person walked a total distance of 15 meters with increments of 5 meters in between, and the time that it took to reach each 5 meter increment was recorded. So we'd need two tables, one for distance in meters and one for time in seconds. So by clicking on this first table up here, you could enter in distance in meters, and then in the second table you can enter in time in seconds. And right away you see that we have an issue here where our columns are not wide enough to accommodate the values that you put in there. So what you need to do is take your cursor, and at the very top between the column names A and B, or whatever the columns are, you'll see the cursor change shape. If you left click down, you can drag that column width until it's an appropriate width to accommodate the value that you have in there. The next thing that you'd want to do is to make these values look neat, essentially. And to do that, you left click on one of the cells and drag it over until you have highlighted both cells. And we're going to want to center, bold, and underline these titles. So to hit center, up top you should see a little icon where the lines are aligned in the center. If you click this, your text is automatically centered. While still having the cells highlighted, if you move over to the bold icon, it's a big B, you can click that, and then the values are bolded. And then the last thing, if you just slide over 2 spaces, you should see the underline icon. If you click that, then you now have both column titles bolded, centered, and underlined. You can click off of these. Okay, so in order to input the data, it's as simple as clicking in a cell and entering the data. And I can do this by, well, if we started at 0 meters, essentially our starting point, my first value will be a 0. And if my increments were 5, I'll just increase by that much. So 0, enter, 5, enter, 10, enter, 15, enter. And for the time, well, at 0 meters, it's 0 seconds. That's where we started. So 0, enter, and then I have values for 4 seconds to get to the 5 meter point, 8 seconds to get to the 10 meter, and 12 seconds to get to the 15 meter mark. Now, as it is, these values are adjusted to the right side, but you can center those values to make them look nice by left clicking up top on the 0 value, dragging down to the 15, and dragging over to the other column and releasing the left click button. Now if I go up top, I can again choose the center icon, and all of my values have been centered. Now, in order to, if there's a particular number of decimals that you need to have visible in your columns, you can adjust and format these numbers to show that. So let's say I wanted to adjust my times to show at least 2 decimal places. I can left click on the 0 up top, drag all the way down to my last value, which is 12, release the left click, and then if you right click anywhere on those 4 highlighted cells, a menu pops up, and if you choose Format Cells, and in the number, you can switch from General, which is already highlighted, to Number by left clicking, and then depending on how many decimal places that you need, you can adjust it accordingly here. I'll say 2 decimal places. And now all of my values go out to the second decimal place. Now, if let's say for this trial I did, for this experiment rather, I did 2 trials. Let's say the first trial I did it at a constant speed. So the entire length of the 15 meters, I just walked at a constant speed. And you can kind of see that because from 0 to 5 it's about 4 seconds, and from 5 to 10 it's another 4 seconds, and 10 to 15 it's another 4 seconds. But if I also did a trial where I accelerated in between each one, well, I'd like to make another set of data tables for that. But I want to differentiate between those two. So what I'd like to do is add a title for these data to indicate that it's a constant speed. To do that, I'm going to highlight all of these cells by left-clicking up here and dragging over until I've encompassed all my data. Now I'm going to move my cursor to the very bottom of this, and you're going to see the cursor change right there. If you left-click, you can pull that down, and I'm going to pull it down about 2 cells worth. And what I'm going to do up top is I'm going to put a title for all of these data that it was a constant speed trial. To do that, if I were to just put it in one cell like this, you can see that would work, and that'd be okay. But if you wanted to make this a big title, I'm going to delete this. And what I want to do is I want to combine all 6 of these cells so I can have one big title space. So to do that, again, I just drag over all 6 cells, and I want to combine them so that they're all one big cell. To do that, after highlighting the cells, I will then choose the option up here to merge and center. What it does is it takes all 6 of those cells and makes them one big cell, and then it centers all the text that would be in that cell. So if I click merge and center, you'll notice that now it's just one big cell. And I'm going to change the font so that this title really stands out and call it a constant speed trial. So if I want to make a set of data table for my accelerated motion trial, then I will do a very similar thing right below by highlighting all of those data cells and merging and centering those. Again, I'm going to put in my title here for accelerated motion. And I want to change the font to something that could be accommodated. And it looks like I might be able to get away with 16, a font of 16. And maybe I just, because I'm a little obsessive, I want to change the font up here to match the font down below. So I'll do that. Constant speed trial and accelerated motion trial. Now just as above, I'm going to put in column titles along with a unit. And again, I'm going to highlight both of these column titles. I'm going to center them, bold them, and underline them. And then below, I will input the data for my distance and time. 0 meters, 5 meters, 10 meters, 15 meters. And for the time, since I accelerated, it's going to take less and less time between each increment. So 0 takes me 4 seconds, and then even less time, 7 seconds, and then 9 seconds. And you can notice, in between the first and the second, there's 4 seconds. In between the second and the third, there's only 3 seconds. In between the third and the fourth, there's only 2 seconds, because I'm getting faster and faster. Now let's say that I want to add a third column here. Well, before I do that, I'll highlight all of my data, and I will center. And then let's say again, I want to keep my time in seconds to the second decimal place. I will highlight all those values, and I will right-click inside of those cells and choose Format Cells, go to Number, and then I'll choose 2 decimal places and click OK. But let's say I want to add a third column for my accelerated motion trial. Let's say I want this column to be to be titled Time Squared. In other words, I want to take the column for time, and I want to have the value squared, and I want to put it underneath of this column title. So I'll need to have the title Time Squared, and notice to get that little squared symbol, I used Shift, and then I hit the 6 key, and that gave me that little hat. So time squared, and my units must then be seconds also squared, and now I have my column title. But as you can see, it doesn't fit inside of that cell. So just like I did before, I'm going to come up top, and in between the C and the D, I'm going to stretch that column width so that it's large enough to accommodate that column title. And then I'm going to click on the cell to highlight it, and I will center, bold, and underline. Now, instead of using my calculator and just squaring 0 and then putting the value here, squaring 4, putting the value there, squaring 7 and putting the value there, what I want to do is I want to make a formula that will do all that work for me. So here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to click in the very first spot below the times squared title. And I'm going to move my cursor up top until I get to what is called the formula bar. And if you click inside of here, we're going to give it a formula. We're going to tell it to equal the value that's to its left squared and put that value in that cell. So to do that, in the formula bar, I need to enter equals, and then I'm going to tell it what I want it to equal. I want it to equal the guy next to it, and I'm going to click him, and I want it to be squared. So right after I've clicked it, I've let go, and then I'm going to enter Shift 6 and the number 2. And you can see up top that I've taken the cell left to it and squared it. Now, all I need to do at this point is click Enter. And as you can see, that value has already been done. So essentially, it takes the guy next to it, squares it, and put its value here. And this should make sense because 0 squared is equal to 0. Now, instead of doing that for all 4 of these columns, because that's not really going to save me time, what I want to do is go right back up to that cell, click it, and in the bottom right corner, where you see that little black square, if you move your cursor slowly, you see this. It looks like a sniper's, what you would see in a sniper rifle, a little crosshair. And as soon as you see that, you can left click that little black box and drag it down these 4 columns and release it, and you can instantly see that it has already squared all the values next to it. And this is going to be really handy in the future for doing large amounts of data that need to be squared or square rooted or maybe cubed. While these values are already highlighted, I can now center and click off. And here I have my data tables for constant speed and for accelerated motion.